you have three capacity development streams in the project. You have collaborate, you have thinking in systems, and you have to strength evidence, the third one. So we have discussed these streams until now, presented like a few of the elements that you want to, sorry. Everybody can see the presentation? On my, the present? Everybody seeing this presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
You can? Okay, good. Thank you. So, sorry, I start again. So you have these three work streams, three capacity building development streams: collaborate, thinking systems, and strength evidence. There are a lot of activities inside of each one of these work streams. And what you're going to do today is to explore each one of these streams, the activities that we imagined and you intend to develop in each one of these streams, and the overall objective of the project. So this diagram here you're going to explore in the next minutes is just the overall flow of the project throughout the next 10 months, basically. And this other diagram here is all the key milestones in terms of learning, WebEx meetings, workshops, documents that you want to develop. And just to emphasize, this is a first draft because we want to build this strategy with you. So you want to hear your feedback today. You want to see what you think is going to work, what's not, etc. Okay? So, and just to highlight one thing, I need to bring some of my culture, sorry. So this is a painting from 1908 in Brazil, and the other one is a painting from 1928. You see, there are 20 years of difference between these two, and they're completely different. What happened in Brazil at that time, Brazilians said, we don't want to copy European paintings anymore. We want to do something that's authentic and that reflects what Brazil is. So what I would like to do today is we want you to look at this diagram and see what makes sense for me, what makes sense for my city. Let's do something that's really meaningful and functional in our cities, okay? You don't want you to accept what you're proposing, you want you to discuss and to build together, okay? So, basically, this diagram shows the overall logic of the project. You have this first phase, that's stakeholder engagement. So basically, you're trying to ask the question, who are the stakeholders and how we are going to engage them in the decision-making process that's going to be initiated right after this phase. So this step is kind of a container for all the decision-making process that's going to start later. The activities that it involves are mainly two: to develop a stakeholder engagement plan and to have a stakeholder, to have a workshop on collaboration of data governance that will help to form the skills and other necessary knowledge to implement this plan, okay? Next, basically when you have everyone that you need to have around the table, you are going to discuss the problem and the challenges that you chose. For example, if you chose solid waste management, you have a specific challenge that you want to approach. Probably different stakeholders have different perspectives about that problem. So the thinking systems workshop will help to get everyone, all the perspectives around the table, and identify where the knowledge gaps, what things that you don't know, and things that you need to know about that problem. So based on this systems thinking workshop, you're going to define a strategy to collect data and analyze data. That's the next stream. So you are the question that you are trying to solve in the next phase is what does evidence can teach us about the problem? So for example, if you're collecting data on solid waste management, how this data can help these different stakeholders to change their perspective about the problem, what you can learn about this problem based on data. The next step is what's our new consensus on this problem, because hopefully data evidence is going to teach us something new that nobody in the stakeholder coalition have thought before, or maybe that we acknowledge that our existing perspectives were actually true and valid, okay? In the next and final step, basically, you have the visioning workshop that you collect all this, you bring all this information that was collected in the form of situation analysis. This situation analysis will be presented during this preparatory stakeholder meetings and visioning workshop. In this visioning workshop, basically people are going to form, shape a new vision and define what solutions can you help to achieve this vision. So the guiding overall question is, what's our vision for the future and which best solutions, like pilot activity or policy recommendations, can help us to achieve that vision. And finally, what needs to be done to implement the solution. So basically, the overall perspective, you are like, who needs to be around the table to make this process inclusive? Then you have a phase of systems thinking and evidence, strengthening evidence to frame the problem. What's the problem that you are trying to approach, and trying to have some form of a consensus about this problem. And then you have, okay, if you have a common perspective about what the problem is, what's the solution that you want to implement in the third phase of the project. So this is kind of the second phase of the project, and the implementation of the solution that the multi-stakeholder coalition finds is the next phase of the project, phase 3. Okay, so this is basically the overall framework of the project, what you are trying to, the overall flow of the project, what you're trying to achieve. Would you have any questions? Now we are going to open to discuss a little bit this diagram, this framework, and also we are all here as part of the team to answer your questions and maybe elaborate a little bit more on these ideas. So please, the floor is open. If you have any questions, just unmute your mic. Okay, if you don't have any questions. Oh, you have a question? Okay, sorry.
So maybe to just start the discussion because people. So maybe to just start the discussion because people may feel a bit shy to ask. Aline, would you mind just telling us a little bit more about the first part of your diagram, the stakeholder engagement, like how would you envisage this process to happen? What exactly would have to happen at the city level? What would have to happen at the regional level? And how is this linked to co-learning?
Okay. So maybe I can go to the other diagram really quickly because that shows some of the parts. So basically what needs to happen in this first phase is the elaboration of stakeholder engagement plan. What it is. Basically, we are going to provide you a template, discuss this template with you. And this stakeholder engagement plan is kind of a social contract, okay? So we are going to define how different stakeholders are going to be participating in this next 10 or 2 years process in this project. So if you have all the phases of the project, we are going to decide, okay, who are the stakeholders? We are going to do a stakeholder analysis. Who are the key stakeholders in this project that are impacted by the project or they are influencing the process around, for example, solid waste management? Or they are just very stakeholders that are very interested in that topic. So first, the stakeholder analysis will map these stakeholders, for example, not just about like, not just a desk process, desk research process, but about going there and talking and interviewing local stakeholders and asking questions, see if they want to be, what are their interests in that topic, etc. And then you're going to outline how the core group of the multi-stakeholder coalition wants to involve these stakeholders throughout this process. For example, if you have great speakers, what's the level of engagement that you want them to have? Maybe you want them, you want them to be part of, if you have a research phase that's going to collect data and analyze data, you want them to be involved in the decision-making about the data collection and the evidence. Or, for example, you want just to reach out to them during the data collection analysis as to answer the questionnaire. So you see there are different levels of engagement that you can have for each stakeholder in each phase of the project. So the idea is that you can have that conversation in the beginning to clarify and build trust and transparency to in the process. So basically, after this, and these small circles here, they are WebEx meetings that you can have to support the elaboration of the plan, to support any kind of knowledge that you need to exchange, etc. With us. These WebEx are with us, can be bilaterals with your liaison officer, for example, Serene is the liaison officer for NAGA, Natasha is the liaison officer for Ulaanbaatar NAD, Omar for Battambang, etc. So can be bilateral meetings with your liaison officer to discuss a specific point of the trainings, of the strategies, of the stakeholder engagement plan, or it can be WebEx meetings that are general to all the group. So basically, like the stakeholder engagement process in this first phase, we are going to elaborate this plan. It's around 6 weeks. We are going to have like 3 weeks to elaborate. 1 week we are going to review that, and more 2 weeks to finalize that plan. If this timeline is flexible, and we are going to discuss that later. So once that stakeholder engagement plan is clear, and you have clarity about what you're going to do in terms of participation in the process, you're going to have the workshop on collaborative and adaptive governance that will, in the preparatory meetings before that, that will help to develop the necessary skills or knowledge or any kind of activity that you need to implement the stakeholder engagement plan. So, for example, if you define, okay, we need to do a lot of focal groups throughout this process, maybe you need to cover a little bit about how to facilitate focal groups in this workshop, just to give a very simple example. But the skills that you're going to develop can vary a lot. In this the importance is really emphasize that it's not us, SCAP, that are developing the agenda and the objective of the workshop. We are going to do that with the focal point. To do really some workshop that is meaningful, impactful, effective in the local level. Okay. In the preparatory stakeholder meetings before the workshop, they are in person, in which the idea is that you meet different stakeholders to discuss specific topics to prepare them to the general workshop, for example, during the weekend. And after this engagement, collaborative and adaptive governance workshop, you have the announcement of the stakeholder coalition. And after this process, you have a debriefing and a reflection about the workshop with the focal points and other stakeholders. So basically, this is the overall perspective, overall framework of the first 2 months, let's say, of the stakeholder engagement process. Do you have any questions about that part? Is that helpful? Yeah. Yes. Dada, David, Kanika. Kanika from Batman joined too, so welcome. Any questions? If you don't have any questions now, you can maybe move on to the next and have questions in the end when all the process is clear. Sounds good? People, are you there? Okay, so I'm going to move on to talking about the thinking systems part. So let's explore a little bit this diagram here, just to clarify the diagram. You have these circles that are online activities. There are more online activities that are not here in this diagram, but these are just a few ones that are really related to, directly related to the workshop. The in-person workshops and preparatory meetings are this hexagon and this rectangle here. Rectangles here. And then you have these triangles that they are key milestones in the project related to plans. For example, you have the stakeholder engagement plan, the evidence gap analysis, the extreme evidence plan, and the situation analysis. And finally, you have this star here. This star is the learning assessment questionnaire that you can explain later, but basically a way for us to think and decide about what's the best, what's the knowledge that you have now, and how throughout this process, how our knowledge changed. So comparing the beginning and the end of the process. So let's move up for the thinking systems stream. So basically you have a WebEx on systems thinking that will review a few concepts of systems thinking and talk a little bit of methodology here. Then we have, Omar has a question. Please, Omar.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. This is about the earlier segment. I was speaking, but I think there was something wrong with my connection. Based on, I think I'm glad that Kanika from Habitat for Humanity Cambodia can join. Based on our last meeting in the country when we were talking about our stakeholder engagement kind of co-learning strategy, we had two questions. One is based on the theme of the project around sustainable urban resource management, what would you say are some of the stakeholder groups that we should be reaching out to in the city to engage as part of the coalition to be launched? And secondly, we identified that there are some really significant trust deficits between certain stakeholder groups, and this may also, affect their comfort level in participating in the workshop. So, what do you recommend in terms of helping, even before the workshop, engaging some of these groups in the co-learning around stakeholder engagement to kind of break down these barriers and establish trust in the project?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Omar. So the stakeholder analysis is a tool to help the core group of the multi-stakeholder coalition to identify these local stakeholders. These local stakeholders, in case of the solid waste management, can be, for example, waste pickers, can be officials, public officials that are working that thematic, can be even officers from regional and national level that somehow are affecting that issue in the city. Can be non-profit organizations that are involved in solid waste management and that and then. So can be even like schools or academia, can be any stakeholders any stakeholder that has some form of engagement and interest in that topic, or a stakeholder that's influencing that topic, for example, solid waste management, or a stakeholder that's impacted by that topic. Not necessarily a community has that as a priority, but the households might be necessary to involve them. So the stakeholder analysis really will help to identify the stakeholders locally. About the trust, building trust between the participants. So that's exactly the crucial point about this stakeholder engagement plan. In all the process that comes before the workshop. Is to establish this trust between the stakeholders to make them engage throughout the process in the next month. So the idea is that this stakeholder analysis is about reaching out to different stakeholders and talk to them, having bilateral meetings, asking questions, get to understand a little bit about their perspective of the problem, opening dialogue. Opening the conversations between stakeholders is a key point during the stakeholder engagement plan. Because it's not a desk research, it's about connecting and reaching out to stakeholders that are in the process, and the plan is just to document that process that happens. So beyond bilateral meetings, another way to increase the trust between the stakeholders locally is to clarify expectations. For example, to not promise that, okay, you're going, if the stakeholder coalition, the core group, is not ready to engage, for example, waste speakers to decide about core things in this project. They should not have increased expectations and promise that, okay, you are going to involve you in the entire process in a very high level of participation. You're going to decide everything equally. If they are not open to do that, it's really important to clarify what they're doing to do beforehand, because it's better to be transparent and clarify how the decision-making process is going to be, who is going to decide what, than make promises that are not able to accomplish. So basically, creating dialogues here in the beginning and clarifying decision-making, clarifying this decision-making process, who is going to decide what to increase transparency and increase trust. Does it ask your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Another question? Yes, Natasha is going to add. Oh, so just a second.
Okay, maybe just to reformulate a little bit. So if you kind of look at this chart that you have in front of you, we tried to make different shapes for different types of activities and for different types of outputs. And so, for example, if it's a plan or a kind of report, then you can see it as a triangle. So here for the stakeholder part, it's a orange triangle. Then for the data part, it's a green triangle, and it works again. Oh, cool. Sorry, you're just having a little bit of technical issues. So the triangles are basically pieces of paper that are the outcome of a process. The round circles they are WebEx meetings with us, like today's meeting. Hello? Yeah, like today's meeting, or slightly less formal meetings, yeah? And then you have these rectangular things, and they are basically preparatory events. And this is what Alini described a little bit. So we're not bringing everybody cold into the workshops. In the Philippines, you use this word socialize. We would like to ensure that all the groups that are joining the multi-stakeholder coalition are properly prepared or socialized to have a maximum impact in the coalition. So this means, on the one hand, that, for example, if your local government in your city has certain views that you feel are maybe not super conducive to have a discussion in a multi-stakeholder setting, then maybe we will have a socializing preparatory meeting with them, where we exchange with them about most constructive ways to talk with their different kind of constituencies, so that they don't feel defensive, but they're also aware that there is like a power gap and so on, right? So if you feel your local government could benefit from some preparation, then this is a stakeholder group we will prepare. On the other hand, if it's like NGOs or communities that have maybe an issue of speaking up, or that have never collectively themselves discussed what their ideas and priorities around a certain topic are, then you maybe need to have a preparatory event for these local communities. Maybe there needs to be a preparatory event for academia in case that they want to present some kind of research, but they don't know how to present it in a way that everybody understands best. And this kind of stuff, deciding who needs what kind of preparation, is something that the local focal points jointly with the core group need to decide, because you know your city best, you know what has happened in the past, people give feedback to you informally, you know what strengths and weaknesses certain stakeholder groups have. After that, you have the formal workshops, and these are diamond shapes. And again, you have these formal workshops for each of the streams. So, and this is where everybody comes together and makes decisions. And for the stakeholder coalition, the decisions are what will be the rules of engagement for us, like who makes decisions, who participates, who contributes, what outputs, what expectations they have. It also assigns roles within the stakeholder coalition process over the next months. It assigns a timetable. So all these things are then decided during this workshop and then formally announced. So everybody knows what's going on, and we're very transparent about it, and we're involving everybody in it. And then we're moving to the next set. So basically, all the activity streams follow a similar logic. They start out with some discussions between us and the stakeholders and core groups to decide how we want to proceed and prepare everybody. Then we prepare everybody, and then we do the event, and then we have a debriefing about it. So that's kind of the logic that we do over and over again, because this is like a learning project, learning by doing and kind of reiterating. Okay, sorry for taking such a long time, but I thought maybe rephrasing may help, because I think this is the basic we need to get right, right? Okay.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
No question.
Okay, so maybe okay, good. So now moving to the next stream. So basically you can see this evidence gap analysis here, and if you see is a preparatory time of 2 to 4 months. So let's just explain a little bit what's that. So basically the collection of existing data or evidence, information, etc., available in the cities. You have which kind of data you have on solid waste management, etc. So the idea is that that's a joint effort between the local entity responsible for research and data collection, can be academia, can be a nonprofit organization, varies across the cities. and SCAP. So both are going to be 2 to 4 months collecting this data and having that available. So when the when the other activities of the stream, for example, the strength evidence plan, etc., start, you know already what's there in the city, what data is already there collected. So the idea is that this evidence gap analysis will be ready before the Thinking in Systems workshop. So the Thinking Systems workshop, as Natasha presented, follows the same logic as before. You have the preparatory meeting, where the stakeholders, different stakeholders, will discuss about the problem and define the causes and effects and have a new understanding or a more complex understanding about all the perspectives of everyone about that problem. And then you have the workshop in systems thinking to bring all these perspectives together and start to craft a strengthening evidence plan based on a research plan to define and monitor the activities for the next 4 months of the project. So which data is going to be collected, why you're collecting the data, how you're going to analyze the data, and what's the final product for the situation analysis. So, so the systems thinking workshop is basically the connection between the first stream, like what the stakeholder engagement process, and the data collection and analysis that's starting next. Any questions at this point? Any comments, additional explanations from the other team?
Hi, Eleni. Hi, colleagues. Can you hear?
Yes.
Hi, thanks. This is Tam from UN Habitat. Just a few quick comments. I just wanted to start by saying I think there's been an exceptional amount of work that's been put into this, so thanks for that. And also, as a fairly visual person, I really appreciate the colors as well as the different ways of establishing different online and then offline and in-person deliveries of the learning. So for myself, I'd say I very much appreciate that. Maybe this is just an initial thought, but I look at the broader kind of timeline of 1 to 10 months. And I think there could be a value perhaps in breaking it down into 3 components. So maybe like month 1 to 4, months 4 to 8, and month 8 to 12. Only in that I think perhaps for someone that's coming new to this process, particularly if they're a new stakeholder that hasn't been engaged, I think that information shared could be a little overwhelming for someone, at the same time trying to contextualize and understand sustainable urban resource management in addition to looking at how the timelines might come together. I put together something similar to this a while ago in some of our collaborations with Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, and some of the feedback that I recall receiving from the management there was really what they wanted was a one page that said, if I'm a particular type of stakeholder, in this case, local government, what are the meetings that I need to be involved in, and what is the kind of purpose or outcome that is intended to be achieved out of each of these meetings. So I'm thinking perhaps there could be, as the stakeholder engagement plan evolves, and I can see that's at the very front, maybe we could look at, and I'm happy to help support, of course, and put together like a structured plan as to different types of stakeholders and what engagements would be relevant for them. And in the context of learning, recalling back to uni and assessments, I think the value would be to recognize out of each of these particular engagements, what is the, as they say, maybe a rubric, what is the key outcomes that is intended to be achieved at each progressive phase of the project. So, I mean, just some thoughts about how to structure the timeline in a different way. Some people may appreciate it in more table format, but I think putting it in specific dates, like in this month, these are engagements that you can expect, and sometimes help. But overall, I think it's really helpful, the timeline that you've put together already. So just some initial comments and an offer to support as we move progressively through the project as well.
Thank you very much, Sam. Yes, we're really glad to hear that you like this, and also you like the colors. But yes, it's a really, you have the the graphic for the 3 streams. I didn't include in this presentation, but you can send that later. But of course, yes, very, very helpful feedback. It's really good to have this stakeholder focus timelines with meetings and outputs for each stakeholder. Thank you very much for your suggestion. Any other questions? Okay, so I move a little bit on, and you can please stop me at any time that you have a question, and you are going to have a dialogue like soon. I stop talking soon, I promise. So, so basically, okay, we have this the stakeholder engagement part in the beginning. We have this thinking system block here with the workshop and the preparatory meetings and the WebEx meetings. We have this phase here for collecting and analyzing data with the possibility of a local workshop or technical support in each city. And we have, you start to move, by the end of this process, you start to move towards the visioning workshop. Before you move to that, just to clarify, the situation analysis is basically a document that will summarize and collect all the information that was collected, all analysis of all the information that was collected, including, for example, analysis of policies that that are related to that term challenge in the city. This situation analysis is going to be presented and discussed during the stakeholder preparatory meetings before the visioning workshop. So if you imagine, for example, if you have one group of stakeholders that is the local government, you have a presentation for them on the situation analysis. You can have a presentation for academia, you can have a presentation for nonprofit organizations, whatever the arrangement that's going to be defined by the coalition, by the focal points, etc. So this WebEx meeting follow the same logic. A WebEx meeting on visioning to understand what visioning is, what's going to be the method that is going to be used in the workshop. Then you have co-learning WebEx meetings with the focal points. To co-design the workshop and objectives, to co-design the objectives and the agenda of the workshop. Then you have the trainers of trainers to prepare the focal points to co-facilitate the preparatory meetings and the visioning workshop. Finally, we have the preparatory meetings in person. We have the visioning workshop. And you have the briefing and reflection after the visioning workshop to evaluate the process. The visioning workshop has a few activities inside of it. So basically, if you are going to present this entire situation analysis, the result of this month for the research, and you are going to create a vision for the future related to that specific challenge and prioritize, choose a solution that can help to achieve that vision. So basically you're creating, after you created the consensus about, okay, that's the problem that you have here. The problem is, I don't know, if you can put an example later, but the problem is agreed between different stakeholders. Then we have now a new vision that's common and it makes sense for different stakeholders during the visioning workshop. Then the members of the stakeholder coalition, they will have about 1 month or more. Always, this timeline is flexible according to the city, the dynamic of each city, that they will draft a policy recommendation in a pilot activity plan for the following year and go back to the coalition and present these documents that are draft. So basically, this is the overall view of the key activities that we were preparing and planning, thinking this last month to guide us throughout the next 10 months of the project. this is a first draft that you want really to discuss and think and criticize and get suggestions and improve, because each city has a different timeline, has a different process, and have different challenges, okay? So I think this is the main overview. Do you have any additional comments? Okay, your question? Serene, Alex?
Maybe just as a comment, as Tam said, the diagram right now doesn't even include the content in terms of what is SERM and other things like this, also the SERM components and so on. So this diagram here only shows the things that are directly linked to the process of preparing and running workshops. So I'm kind of also thinking already now, just thinking out loud, that we could change a little bit also the shapes, because, for example, right now all the shapes are one color and all of them involve ESCAP. But there, of course, will be preparatory activities where ESCAP will not be in the pilot city, and maybe we can show them as different kind of rectangles, just to highlight that here is where ESCAP is directly supporting, and here is what the local teams are doing on their own. So for the moment, everything that you see is basically where ESCAP will be directly there, and also UN Habitat depending on each city and situation. So in the round circles, this is webinars. Obviously, we're trying to have a discussion with you, and as we're doing these weekly over the next few months, because we have a lot of ground to cover, we hope we get into a nice 2, 3, 4-way communication mode where you give comments, share experiences, and so on. The rectangles, the preparatory events, this is actually when somebody from ESCAP or a specific expert will come to the city and support you. And then obviously the diagram-shaped workshops, these are the kind of key milestone workshops that we have with you. There also you will get support from us. And when Tam proposed it would be useful to split this up by month, this is something that we would encourage you to do as part of the stakeholder engagement plan, because you need to decide who needs what kind of preparation and what form, through how many meetings. And so kind of zooming in further is something that you would need to do with your stakeholders in your city. Yeah, this is just something I would like to add.
Thank you. Serena?
Yes, I just wanted to add something as well. So thank you so much, Alini, for introducing each step and then going into the details. And I agree that was great work to visualize that as well. And also from maybe the more managerial side or the legal framework for that, we shared recently with the local focal points the LOA templates, and it's a bit like reflecting all these steps as well. So each result area basically covers one of the colors you can see here. And the more you, as Natasha said, can define for yourself how many meetings, how many or what activities you would like to do in your city based on this overall framework, that also helps to then develop and finalize the LOA as such and find the right wording so that the template that's currently out there is then aligned to the local context. And that's just an add-on to that as well. And in that LOA, you also have a rubric for defining the responsible entities who are taking the lead, but that will also, of course, be in a participatory way. So the responsible entity is basically just like the lead person, the chairperson, but throughout the stream, especially Alini will lead on participation. This will then help the lead person to be participatory. So it's just an add-on from my side.
Hello. Hello. Can I have some question about the policy recommendation? It's really at the end of the month of 10, but for Thailand, our policy recommendation, it should be finished. The budget year is will start on the 10, the month of 10 on about December, October. So that it means we should to finish it in the September to get the policy recommendation. Then we can have a like the activity or can do the policy on for the next year. So I'm not sure that it should to finish on that timeline, or it can be the next of the next year.
Hey, Kanika, it's me, Serene. Just to answer that question, so the time frame that is given here is like a recommendation, or let's say like a template. But of course, it needs to be adapted to the local context. So if you say, for example, policy recommendations should be already finalized for October, and the timeline for that is too narrow, then we could discuss different options also in the context of NADI. And then Natasha will follow up on that as well, so to see like what could be shifted. Is it possible to have a meaningful participatory engagement process that also then gives the recommendations by October already? Or is it something then that is then going to be achieved, as you said, next year? So basically it's good that you are flagging that, and then the entire process on the local level can be adapted. Those sequences that are given now here are just because of the interdependencies, to make clear like what leads into what, and to give a broader overview of like how much time each step would consume. But if on the local context there needs to be a revision, then of course we as the team and also with you together in the Earth Foundation are happy to revise that.
Going to ask you? Okay, sorry, I had to step out because we keep experiencing technical problems here, so I didn't hear your question originally, Kanika, but now I understand the questions about timeline. So this is exactly it. What you see in front of you is a template of a perfect, timeline with no problems, no issues, no holidays, no elections, and this is what we think it would take if everything goes smoothly, and everything will not go smoothly. So we expect that this whole stretch that shows here as 12 months will not be 12 months. It will take longer in every city. But what will take longer and what will go faster is really, as Serene says, dependent on the process in each city. So going a bit overboard, like taking a few months longer overall, or for some activity stream to take a few months longer is okay. As Serene says, certain things depend on earlier outputs. So then this can shift the whole timeline backwards. Other things can happen in parallel and still mean you can hold events at a certain time. But it's very, very important to know that we have some flexibility. Obviously, we don't have years and years and years in this project, but there are some months of flexibility. So if you feel that your data collection doesn't need to take 3 months, but needs to take 5 months, then this can be adjusted. It needs to have the thoughtful input of everybody, and most importantly from you on the ground, because you know what constraints and possibilities there are. Yeah, so this is just a very, ideal timeline which is not being adjusted to the real world. And it's very important that we're flagging this now because, for example, in Battambang, who's the city that is furthest advanced with the LOA, you have proposed to do the visioning workshop, I think already in September or October. And just seeing now maybe all these activities will make it easier for you to plan in more detail, and then maybe you can see that September would just not be realistic for the visioning workshop to happen, because the visioning workshop is the crowning result of all the other activities that come before it. And we really don't want to compromise on quality. So we want all the steps that come before to be done as well as we can. And if that then means it stretches backwards a little bit, then that is okay. Yeah, there just need to be good reasons why we stretch things backwards, and we can see that we're all keeping busy. Omar, please.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah,
Omar?
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I have a little trouble connecting. Just to clarify, as you said, Battambang is a little bit more advanced, I think, than the other cities, and this is just natural that different cities will have different starting points. Is the diagram, I can't see it in front of me, is that also for the ESCAP supported interventions around different training, around the different work streams? Is that the earliest that it would be available? My question is that when planning this timeline, we also need to know, what is the earliest we could avail of the capacity development tools and trainings being developed at the regional level in order to plan our events in city. So are those, deadlines included in this from what we can expect from the regional project team?
Natasha wants to answer. Isn't it?
Hello? Yes, Omar, this is a very important point. Good that you're raising it. So the way that this diagram is in front of us now with this ideal proposal of time is about when ESCAP could deliver the support that we are promising under the project at the earliest. Yeah. So we need time to understand what is evolving in cities, and we need time also to react to it. So we can't compress certain things because we also need to prepare as we're moving along. It's not that we have a toolbox sitting in our office which is ready and we just kind of hand out things. We are learning with you and adjusting to your needs. So this timeline, we can deliver the kind of trainings, we can deliver the kind of expertise that you're looking for within the framework of what the project can offer. And this is a very important point, maybe also, if I may direct this towards Nadi and Kanika. This, Kanika, is why it is important that we do things step by step and not rush, for example, now in the next week and start data collection, because we first need to understand what the stakeholders really identify as problems and as gaps, and then focus the data collection on that, and then have the discussion around what the outcomes are. So yes, the short answer, Omar, is this is the minimum time that we need, and if the cities need longer, the project has a few months of flexibilities to adjust to that. Also, if one city takes much, much longer than all the others to start a certain step or finish a certain step, that means we're out of sync. And then our training deliveries that we're planning to do, like through WebExes, make it difficult because if, like, say, for example, one city hasn't even started the stakeholder plan, but the others are already organizing the visioning workshops, then you know, we're out of sync, and then the latecomer cannot benefit properly from the knowledge because it comes too early for them, and also all the others can't benefit from the lessons learned. So in a sense, we have to try and be as disciplined about the steps as we can, but there is wiggle room and flexibility. But from our side, this is kind of our promise to you that this is when we, at the earliest, can deliver over the next 12 to, let's say, 15 months. Yeah.
Thank you, Natasha. Any other questions? If you don't have any other specific questions to clarify this diagram, I'd like to move on to a more open dialogue about this entire process. So maybe if each one of us could have maybe a few minutes just to reflect about this question. So the questions are, and then you're going to have a dialogue. Each one can share the answers for this question. So basically the questions, the guiding questions are, where would I like to be by the end of the project? What would I like to have accomplished? What did I like about it? What excites me about what you just presented this morning? What I didn't like that much about each, things that I do not motivate me, things I just get even scared just by looking at that. And finally, what I would change on the things that I just heard, or the process, the project in general. So basically, where I want to be, future, what I like about what you have now, what I don't like, and what I would change.
Well, I think I'll just dive straight into what I liked about that lead process. I mean, it gave me quite a bit of clarity. I hadn't been part of any other conversations, but I think it's great that it's very clearly outlined, and it was a very sort of a stark refresher, almost like an immediate refresher from Bangkok to now. It's been a couple of months. I wanted to point out, I just an observation from the discussions before. I think the most important thing for me, one of the takebacks from this discussion is, and I mentioned this at the discussion with Masini Town Council yesterday, is that if the Masini Town Council doesn't drive the process, then I think that's for us the key is that the local government partner is the main driver, and if that doesn't happen, then the stakeholder engagement and all the other pieces won't fall into place. So I was very sort of adamant and very encouraging with the council yesterday that that they provided the appropriate amount of empowerment and with their staff in support of this process and really take the driving seat. I just wanted to share that as a kind of a quick lesson already. I think that's it from me. I really like that little diagram, so thank you for the time invested in putting it together.
And David, thank you. I'm glad that the process is more clear now that you mentioned. And you have any things that you are worried about that are maybe too complicated to happen in the local in Latino? Or even things that you think, oh, this part looks really viable or really interesting, and I kind of like the way that it is outlined now.
I think the good thing about all of this, the stuff that interests me most is when we're going to be getting around to sort of the evidence and what exactly are the root causes of the problems and identifying the solutions and moving forward. That's probably what excites me about this whole process. What really worries me is also wrapped up in that point around the Masini, the local government counterparts or the local government being the drivers of this process. This locally, that without that sort of political will, yesterday we started talking about we needed to perhaps go up a level from just the council and maybe look at the ministry and figure out how many, whether we could get some allies and have some strategic sort of support from the decision makers, the policy makers, so that everything was kind of easier down the line. So that's what kind of worries me. When stakeholders come together, and we'll be bringing the wealth of stakeholders, we'll be bringing private sector, civil society, community, managing all those expectations. To a certain extent, will be a lot easier if the local government is very clear with its process and very clear where it wants to go, so that everybody can kind of just sort of figure out how and where they best fit. That makes any sense.
Perfect. Thank you. It's like hopefully like this 3 first months about stakeholder engagement, we really approach all these issues that you're talking about, because as you said, if the exciting part is for you is like defining the problem, understanding, and then collecting all the evidence on that, we need really to have the stakeholders right around the table. So hopefully like this 3 first months, you are going to approach all of these questions and problems so you can bring all the stakeholders together to do that. One more question. So what if you could change something here? What would change, David?
I hadn't thought that part, to be honest, Elena.
It's a tricky, important question. You can come back.
Process-wise, I think process-wise it fits, but perhaps, no, I don't have anything to add. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. Okay. So maybe you could move on to the next. Thank you very much, David. It was a very nice contribution.
So maybe as next, I'm unmuting Shura. Would you like to answer the question and see like how you? Oh, where are you? Do I have to? Shura, do you still on the call? Maybe then let me proceed. So, oh, Shura, are you there? No, sorry. So then let me just proceed. Kanika from NADI, maybe would you like to contribute and give us your feedback on the question? Thank you in advance.
For me, difficult. Firstly, what I would like to be at the end of project is difficult. I think it's maybe I want the local, both government and people have more awareness about the issue, and they can reflect to the problem smoothly and can make something change. Even a bit is better than today is still okay for me. And for I think it's really exciting to join this project, and that I can learn more about the SDG and have a partner and can learn about the other city also. It's really exciting for me. And that what I worry about is maybe the problem that in the NADI, I think it's really complex than what I think or I expect. And I don't know where I should to start or how we can go to the next step. And it's because it's like the urban or industrial city. It's like the people, local people or migrant worker or people is really busy to join. So it's very difficult to take the participation from the local. But I think it's the stronger point is the local government more like the willing to want to do something. So it will, I think it can be make something change from this stronger point. Yes.
Thank you very much, Kanika. I would like to, so just to acknowledge, like, learning from others, learning from SDGs, hopefully, like, the WebEx meetings, you can, like, cover all the topics that
Yes.
you'd like to learn together, and to, like, can be about localizing, participation, systems thinking. We hope that all the content that you guys like to learn, that you cover that. And also learning from others, as you said. I'm really excited that you're excited about that, because that's a huge part of the project. We want to keep the cities sharing experience and learning from each other throughout the process. About the problems, I see that's a common problem that you and David approach. That's the political will of the local government. So hopefully also that's something that the liaison officers can help, like with bilateral meetings and also the stakeholder engagement process, because having the buy-in from the local governments or all the levels of government is a really important part of this process. And just another comment is the problem about Nadi, that the problem is really complex. Yes, the problems that all the cities have are really complex, and I also share that worry. And hopefully you all can work together and have an impact on those problems. Any additional comments here from the team? Yeah, Natasha wants to have a comment?
Okay, maybe just very quickly, Kanika, getting back to a discussion that we had over email over the last week, and that is, I think, for stakeholders to really join into the process and be excited about it, they need to be true stakeholders, in the sense they really need to have a big stake in the problem. It really must affect their life in a way that they want to spend time solving it. So I think in Nadi in particular, we're still a little bit unclear what exactly the SERM priority should look like, and therefore who the stakeholders should be that are most involved. Because right now we were scoping broadly, right, and we spoke to this community and that community and the school and this and there, but maybe these people are not all interlinked in the same problem. So I think we need to spend more time, particularly in Nadi, defining what the problem is that the project wants to tackle, and then to identify the people that either cause the problem or are affected by the problem in a big enough way so that they want to spend time solving it. Yeah, I think that is something we need to focus on over the next few weeks. Let's take our opportunity to raise.
So just an additional question. So, Kanika, do you have anything that you'd like to change in this process? Can be things like less WebEx meetings. That can be simple, or can be, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you have any reactions to the comments that we had, that you just made also? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kanika. But it's an ongoing conversation. We're just starting now. So who's next? Sorry.
I have a message from Kanika from Habitat for Humanity. Do you still have time to answer, or are you already leaving? So can you hear us? From Battambang?
Hello? Can you hear us? Kanika from Battambang? I think you have an audio. Can you? Sure. Okay, let's come back to Kanika from Battambang later. Can you move to?
So maybe Dada, I think you still had audio problems, but I'm just checking in case you have a solution, or if not, then we will jump to Chris. But Dada, do you want to give it a try? Okay, I can see like we. Okay, so I think Dada is, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. And then there is still Tom and Chris. Maybe Chris, do you want to give us your feedback on the 5 questions?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Thanks. Hi.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for this activity. I think it's very useful. What I would like to accomplish after this project is really methodology that localizes the SDGs. This is still not a very clear approach, even here in the Philippines, on how do we really localize the SDGs. And this one through the SURM, I think is a very specific approach to have this kind of strategy of localizing the SDGs. And I think it would be a very useful guide for the country in localizing all the other SDGs. What I like about the diagram is that it provides a checklist. It looks like a checklist or guide for the whole project. And therefore, because while we do certain projects, at least we are clear on what the different milestones are and the activities and the support activities. What I do not like about it is that it looks too linear. It can show more an iterative process. Like, for example, in the Philippines, we have elections in May. New stakeholders will come in terms of local government and national government. They will come in around June, July, and stakeholder engagement would mean, the process will iterate with this new set of stakeholders. I think it will also be iterative when we overlay the other streams. When you, as Natasha said, if you overlay SURM here, it would look a little more complex than this. And also, what I'd like to see, or maybe add to this, is a timeline of the overall project timeline. Where does this fit in the 3-year project life? This is already phase 2. Are we finished with phase 1? Does this iterate with phase 1? Will this feed into phase 3? Even when you do phase 3, how will this inform phase 3, and how will phase 3 enhance this? Because I would think that this process will be something that we will, suggest later on as a set of approaches and tools. So that's what I'd like to see. I mean, it would be good if from at the beginning of the presentation we see that this is the overall project timeline. What we're discussing now fits into this phase, and therefore, we get the overall view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So just to acknowledge all the points, so you like that we have a methodology to localize the SDGs by the end of this project. You liked about the checklist, the guide that this kind of diagram provides. You didn't like that it's too linear. You need to make more iterative. It's actually, there are a lot of loops going on, but you decided to not put that to make things more clear and simple. And yeah, but totally in the practice of the project, you expect it to be something iterative because the stakeholders, reiterative, sorry, because the stakeholders are coming maybe later in the project, maybe sooner. So you need to have the stakeholder engagement processes throughout the process, defining the problem, something that starts in the beginning, but is reviewed in the Thinking Systems workshop, but also is reviewed again in the Visioning workshop. So we have a lot of loops going on, and these loops are going to be different for each city too, right? So just to clarify your suggestion, if you have an overall project timeline, would it be for each city? Is that your suggestion? Like for the
not necessarily, but the overall project timeline. So we know we are already here in phase 2, what was in phase 1, what we're looking forward to in phase 3, and how these different phases will interact.
Perfect. So you're going to you're all nodding here. You're going to do that. That's a very nice suggestion. Thank you. Maybe we could move on.
Just one add-on to that, Chris. Last week we tried to give an overview and the milestones for 2019, and that presentation we will distribute again. I hope that it will help a little bit to give like the overall overview of the project. But you're absolutely right. It should also we are focusing on phase 1 and 2 in this presentation. We should also give a bit of a foresight information on what's happening in 3 and 4. So thank you for that comment as well. Anything to add, Chris?
Yeah. Well, the reason I suggested that is that I'm looking at phase 3 and maybe looking at, okay, in phase 2 we end at a project activity implementation plan. In phase 3, are we looking at pilot projects that we can learn from, things like that. So these are actually what I would like to visualize, no? In phase 3, is it something like that?
Absolutely agree. Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you so much. We also have.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have Tam here on board. Tam, would you like to answer those 5 questions as well and see how we can get your contribution in as well? Thank you.
Hi, Serene. Hi, colleagues. Hey, thanks for the opportunity to just offer some thoughts as well. Maybe just to start, I'd say I'd be very much in agreement with David and Kanika with the point regarding local government. And maybe a suggestion to think as we progress, it could be worthwhile to explore encouraging a meeting with the local government counterparts directly beforehand, before even the stakeholder engagement commences with other stakeholders. What we've certainly found in the case of some programming that was done here in Thailand was that it'd be quite beneficial to have an already agreed upon framework to move with. And I think the example in the signing with Nadi Sub-District most recently, a few weeks ago, is a good example, although we have similar arrangements with Bangkok in some of our work as well. And then that agreement allows us to really ensure the political support of the decision makers at the top level, as David was suggesting. At the same time, what we've done on specific interventions where we're providing support is we've identified who should be the relevant focal points, the technical focal points at the working level. And in Bangkok, there's 3 different interventions that are quite different from each other in some of the work that we've been doing. So I think identifying these people beforehand, having meetings with them, and in that way, then when the ideas are presented to the local government, and even this timeline when it's presented to them, they feel comfortable explaining it, understanding it, and they appreciate the work that's been put into it as you progress forward. So maybe just one kind of suggestion in terms of that stakeholder engagement, to have more almost like a pre-stakeholder engagement, but specifically with the local government, because it'll be their role to continue and ensure the work's sustainable as well. Another maybe reflection is that there's certainly going to be a number of urban forums that are happening, both national, regional, at different times, across this timeline, and it'd be worthwhile for us to see how we engage with them. Certainly, the Pacific Urban Forum, which will be in Nadi in Fiji, the Cambodia Urban Forum, the Regional Urban Forum in Malaysia. So these are really good opportunities for us to elevate visibility for the work that's been done to the broader community of urban stakeholders, or for them to maybe even look at how they can replicate the knowledge and experience shared and learned through this process. So something that could be valuable. And in terms of what I would personally think would be really valuable to see at the end of this process, I mean, will be the phase 3 is that implementation side, as Chris you were referring to a bit earlier, and I think that's a really exciting part of what we actually achieve at the end of it. I've been kind of going through some materials, and I saw in 2014, ESCAP and Habitat, we worked on kind of a video piece that talked about voices from the slums. You'll see it on YouTube if you connect in on that as well. But what I'm getting at is, I think there's a value in seeing how we can kind of capture some of the experiences that are developed at the end of the process, in the end of the 2 years, in some sort of visual, maybe video format that we can share and update and put out there, as well as a collaborative process, and that people can understand what are the actual results that are achieved. And this would be very valuable for other UN agencies and stakeholders at that country level to appreciate the work that's been put into it as well over the course of the 2 years. So something that we can reflect on much later on, but I think if we can kind of also factor that into the process, it could be quite valuable as well. But I think thanks for the presentation and putting everything together. Much appreciated.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I was just speculating here in the room, saying I would like to react to your point. So point number 1, in terms of the local government, this is kind of part of the preparatory process that we mean by the rectangles in this diagram. So when we mean preparing stakeholders, we're not just talking about preparing communities, but also about preparing local governments. So absolutely, I think what you're raising here is super important, because if the powerful and the decision makers or the duty bearers don't have a buy-in into this process, it's going nowhere. So we definitely need to very specifically prepare them for the multi-stakeholder process and find out what they're willing to do, what they're comfortable, and how they want to move along. And so far in the process, we have done that. We've been at big pains to really bring in the local governments from the beginning, that the application had to be endorsed by the local governments, then during the missions that we went to visit, to scope, we always met with the local government, and as you say now, signing different agreements, they always involve either directly signing it with the local government or have the local government in the negotiations. But as we move forward, absolutely, they're one of our key stakeholder groups, and they really have to drive the process, and we're very happy that Nadi signed the exchange of letters where they say, yes, we will drive the multi-stakeholder coalition. So that's to your point number 1. Then the urban forums, absolutely, and not just the urban forums, but any other meetings. So I know that in Battambang, some of the people from the core group have gone today to a SDG localizing meeting in Siem Reap. And as these different opportunities pop up, we always want to involve everybody. Also, like, for example, yesterday or before yesterday, we wrote an email to the local focal points in each city, inviting you to come to a workshop at the end of April in Bangkok. So these kind of opportunities we're definitely have to bring into the project and proactively do. And anybody being aware of any other meetings, please let us know. And then the multimedia, absolutely, we want to document the process. Lessons learned is a huge part of the third or fourth phase of the project, so sharing that with everybody. And we don't want to wait till the end of the project either. We actually want to do it throughout, and this is something we need to proactively explore with each city, also how we best do it, maybe how to involve young people or other stakeholders in the documentation of the process itself and of the outcomes of it. So absolutely, Tom, 3 super important points.
Many thanks for clarifying. Great it's incorporated already as well. Thanks. Cheers.
So the last question, just to see if you want to Kanika from Habitat for Humanity, if you can hear us, if you would like to answer this question, or if there are technical issues, then of course we fully understand, and I give the floor back to Aline.
Do we answer the questions?
Okay, so you are almost, we have a little bit of a few more minutes, so maybe probably now you don't have a time for checkout. How are you leaving the meeting, or do you have time for that? Would like to just a little bit? Okay, sorry, you're checking here. So just a quick checkout to leave this meeting. So how are you leaving this meeting today, and what you would like to discuss next, or which kind of next path you're really looking for? Just like really quick out of your head, and you can move on. I can start just to be quick. So I'm leaving this meeting excited because I feel like you have discussed important points, and you have a little bit of dialogue. And also I like to really work next on the suggestion that the overall project timeline to clarify the phases. Chris, maybe up next.
Sorry, I'm still on, but yeah, thank you.
Alex?
Firstly, thank you everyone who's been on the call for staying for 2 hours. And thanks to the team here and to Aline for putting in a huge amount of work for clarifying the steps and the process. If you're still feeling a little bit overwhelmed, that's okay. It's a thing that we will go through again and again, and we'll learn by doing, and we'll get more comfortable with it as we go. But one thing I wanted to make a note of is communication between the regional team and the focal points and the stakeholders in the cities. We want this to be a real dialogue. We want to have your feedback. You know, if you're not comfortable talking about that in a meeting like this, please do reach out to your liaison officers. You know, we are not scary. We're not going to bite you, and we want to hear your honest feedback. And if you're not finding this is useful, you're not finding this is working for you as well as it could, please do tell us.
Great, thanks for that feedback. That was very important. Then up next, Kanika from Nadi.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hear you.
Yes.
How are you leaving this meeting today? What would you like to discuss next, so that we cover that next week?
Okay. Yes. So today, okay, I will think about the timeline, and I think it's more clearer that what the timeline next will be, and maybe we will discuss between us about what about that Natasha said about our stakeholder that we should to consider. And for the next, maybe about the next step. And also, I think that the thing that I want to know about the data collection, that what should we do? Yeah, that may be what I want to know later.
Thanks so much. That's very value to know. And then our liaison officer, Natasha, will then follow up with that. Tan, maybe? Word of you?
Hi, thanks. Yes, just playing with you. No, much appreciated again to SCAT colleagues and everyone for putting this together, and obviously all the time of everybody joining. Great to see Christian and other colleagues on the line as well. No, I think the thought that's been put into this has been tremendous. So I think it's been very valuable. Only perhaps how we package this to the different audiences that may pick up this information to make it relevant for them and to make it easily understandable. I think I'm happy to work through together with you on how maybe we can maybe work through those particular areas there. And then I guess next steps is however we look at the implementation, certainly the stakeholder engagement beginning there. My personal interest would be to see how supporting Kanaka, if you need any assistance at any time, obviously reaching out to us, and how we progress to formalize that initial part to progress on forward to perhaps catch up with some of the other countries that are progressing a little bit further on ahead. But thanks for the time today, and for allowing us to contribute. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And then maybe also Natasha, please.
Okay, just very briefly, thanks everybody for participating in this experiment. So we would like to try to have these WebExes weekly, except next week we won't have one because there are Thai and Cambodian holidays, but we will communicate that to you. We're learning how to make this better, right? So please give very specific recommendations how this WebEx can be done better from your perspective as well. So we're overcoming technical issues. We will maybe change a little bit the way that we structure this WebExes, and please give us your feedback. So the most important for us now is to understand how useful you find it and what you need changed for this to work well. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And maybe the last feedback from me before I give it back to the floor to Aline.
So from my side, those WebEx meetings are really key to see how the different stakeholders in each city are also interacting with each other, to have a co-learning effect from the different levels and also the hurdles each city has in her city. And then to have that exchange. So I really highly appreciate that, Aline, you brought us all together and that we had that open call, and also for all the time that people spend on these 2 hours. As next step, I think related to Chris, Willie, and Dada, and the key stakeholders for NAGA, and also, of course, beyond, but as the liaison officer, I'm hoping to catch up with you in bilateral meetings so we can figure out the LOA processes and other parts for your city. And I really hope we can have these bilaterals to strengthen the process, and that we're here backstopping wherever you need us. And that's actually just the next step on my side.
Okay, just 2 words. Thank you. Thank you very much for all your time, for being here these 2 hours, and see you soon.